Sarah, and today I am going to be doing a review of Dear Martin by Nick Stone. For those of you that don't know, Dear Martin is about a guy named Justice, and Justice is an honor roll student. He gets the A's, he doesn't get the B's, you know? And he's currently going to a very prestigious school. He plans to go to Yale. Justice is just very academically gifted. However, one day Justice finds himself brutally put in handcuffs. And so he starts to wonder why he's ended up to this portion of his life. He thought he had done everything correctly. He thought he was not that guy, that black person that would end up being in handcuffs. So in order for him to truly understand what is happening, he decides to start this project called the Dear Martin Project. In this project, Justice basically writes letters to Martin Luther King Jr. telling him about his life experiences, whether with the police or just race involved, or about his friends, or just about his life in general. And so his reason for doing this project in the first place is for him to basically figure out what would Martin do if he was living in this day and age. I sped through this book. I literally read it in probably a few hours within me going to classes and stuff. It is super short. It is so quick. It flies by so quick, but it definitely still packs a punch. Like, this book is really out here trying to punch you in the face. It's just with reality, not violence. I'm gonna give this book a 4 out of 5 stars because there was one specific thing that I really just did not like, but everything else was spot on. Everything was very, very well written. I liked the characters, the plot. It was all just very good. What you first need to understand is that this book addresses so much more things than just police brutality. It talks about colorism and the treatment of lighter-skinned black people in comparison to darker-skinned black people. It also speaks about biracial relationships and the perspective of the parents as well as the person in the relationship. It also talks about the common black racial stereotypes and what the token black person is. And it also covers various conundrums within the black community, such as treating other people differently because they look white or they act white. So let's talk about the characters. I liked a majority of the characters. I felt like they were developed, they just weren't the best. You know, I feel like this book could have really delved in a lot deeper to explaining the characters and like talking about them as a person and how they're who they are today. I specifically really liked Justice in this book because he was a person that could easily point out flaws in his own ways of thinking. What I mean by that is that he would go on a rant, or he would just be talking about something he's passionate about or whatever, and then he would say something that makes me kind of just like flinch a little bit and be like, are you sure about that? That seems a little ignorant. And then I would go back to reading and bam, he's already talking about it, addressing the fact that it was ignorant. And I was like, they're watching me. However, there is one thing that Martin said that really just, it made me so mad, but we'll talk about that later. Not gonna lie, I feel like I could have easily just not done with the romance aspect in this book. Like, I'm not saying it was terribly written or whatever, but it just seemed like it was unnecessary. It just didn't feel right in the book, and I really could have done without it. I think the book would have been perfectly fine without romance. I also feel like the plot was a tiny bit rushed. It was just like towards the end, everything was just happening like bam, 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 bam. Now I want to talk about the one thing in this book that Martin says that really just, once I read this part, I was just like, why? And that is the part where Martin is talking about a specific girl, and he says, yes, she's gorgeous for a white girl. So this phrase is usually used for black girls, in my experience at least. People would say, you're pretty for a black girl. And I've always hated this compliment, this backhanded rubbish. I don't know what it even is. Why can't a person just be pretty? They have to be pretty for their race? Huh? I've never even heard pretty for a white girl. It's always pretty for a black girl. But that doesn't mean it should be used for any other race. I honestly found it extremely unnecessary. Extremely unnecessary. It honestly just seems counterproductive because black girls are always feeling offended when people say these things, but that doesn't mean that it all of a sudden should be said to other races at all. It should never be a thing to begin with. You're pretty, that's it, full stop, period. And you know what, now that I think about it, the way Martin talks about girls and females in this book very much pisses me off. Like, I'm just now starting to notice that when he talks about women and females, he's always talking about the physical before he gets to any other aspect of them. He's always talking about their caboose, or you know, the women, the ladies, the girls. And then he goes into, oh yeah, and she's smart and she's funny and this. And that part doesn't even have as much detail, because I don't want to read about how she's smart or she's funny or she's very creative. No, I want to read about how her body is tight. And like, I get it, he's a teenage boy, you know, hormones and all that. That doesn't excuse anything. I just think the book could have done without it. And then he seemed kind of like flip-floppy, because then when other people would do it, he'd all of a sudden get defensive, but when he's doing it, no one's there to judge him, no one's there to correct him or whatever. But all that aside, I would actually recommend this book to literally everyone. Literally every single person. Whether you support Black Lives Matter, whether you don't support it, you don't understand it, you're indifferent, you don't even know what it is at all. Everyone should read this book, especially if you have a different perspective on the whole Black Lives Matter movement. I think it would be really important for you to read this book, just because then if you're gonna stand against something, I think you should be able to put yourself in the shoes of the other side in order to fully understand what you're supporting or what you're going against. I really appreciate that there was a lot of alternate perspectives in this book. It wasn't all just constant support for the Black Lives Matter movement. There were characters that were like people you see every day, or like people you hear every day, or in the news or in the media. There were people with those opinions in this book, and it really helps to get a full understanding of all sides of the story. I, of course, am in support of the Black Lives Matter movement, always have been, always will be. It was so sad to read this book and finish this book and then think about the fact that this is reality and this is how people are living today. Like with the Hunger Games, I can read the Hunger Games and finish it and think, well, I'm glad that doesn't happen in this world or in this society. Whew. That was a close one. But with this book, it's actually a thing. Like, it's happening. It's reality. It gives you a lot to think about. So that is gonna be it for my review of Dear Martin by Nick Stone. Please let me know what you guys thought of this book if you've read it, or if you followed the discussion I just talked about. Tell me your thoughts, your opinions, whatever. I wanna hear it. That is gonna be it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye!